If you're thinking about taking medication for anxiety, panic disorder, or agoraphobia, you're likely going back and forth in your head. You're really trying to figure out, is this the best decision for you? You might be Googling, you might be in some Facebook groups or on Reddit and doing all the research. Like, does medication work? Is it going to be helpful for me? What type of medication has been helpful? You might be asking other people, which all of this totally makes so much sense because you really want relief, right? You want to get better. But another part of you is really scared, asking questions like, what if I go on it and it makes things worse? Or what if it changes me? What if I have to be on it forever? There are so many what ifs, and I totally get it because I've been there. I tried multiple medications while I was struggling with panic disorder and agoraphobia, and unfortunately, none of them really worked for me. I'll get into that more later, but what I want you to hear right now is I did recover without it. But I'm not here to tell you, yes, you should try it. No, you shouldn't try it. I'm really here to help you make the best decision for you and for your recovery. So before we dive in, I have to say, I am not a clinician, right? I'm not a doctor. I'm not a psychiatrist. I don't prescribe anxiety medication. So if this is something you're really contemplating, I want you to talk to a provider about your thoughts, where you're at, and they'll be able to give you really professional, helpful advice. But here, I want to give you real, honest guidance based on my experience and also hundreds of people who I've worked with and supported through panic disorder and agoraphobia. Okay, let's dive in. This is a really important place to start. Medication is just a tool, like all the other tools that you can use when you're working to recover from anxiety. It's a tool you can try, but you also don't have to try it. And there's absolutely no shame in trying medication. And there's also no shame in not wanting to try medication. I've worked with so many people who have been totally on board, like, I want to try it. I want to see if it's helpful for me. I've worked with many people, many who have been in the middle. Like, I'm not quite sure. I've battled. I want to do it naturally. I want to do it holistically, but I'm also really struggling. And they're really trying to figure out, like, could it be helpful? Could it make things worse? All of that. And that might be where you are. We're going to talk through that. So how I like to explain medication is that it is just a tool that can be really supportive and help turn the dial on anxiety down. Because you're probably feeling like there's a lot of sensations, a lot of symptoms, a lot of racing thoughts, and it really makes it hard for me to focus, to take healthy steps, to do any of the action things that I want and need to do because the anxiety is so loud. Well, medication is a tool that can just help to sort of turn the dial down on all of those things so that you can actually focus on the supportive steps to take that will help you to recover. It kind of helps to take the edge off. And it also helps to stabilize emotions. A lot of people who start medication and find it to be helpful find semi-quickly that it does help to stabilize their emotions and they're not so up, down, or constantly feeling activated and constantly feeling like they're on edge. And because medication can help to turn that dial down, take the edge off, and stabilize your emotions, it can really help you to do the real work. But the important thing to recognize with medication is that it's just like any other tool. It can support you, but it can't do the work for you. I think we're always kind of looking for that thing, right? Maybe medication will be the thing. And I always tell my students, there's not one thing that is going to do it all for you. You can't just look to medication and think this is going to be the thing that's going to solve everything for me. It's just another supportive tool. So let me give you a little analogy because I love analogies. I really find medication to be like the roof on a house. Roof equals protection and support, right? Where the foundation is really all of the work that you're doing to support yourself and to create this healthy relationship with anxiety. It's having those healthy responses to anxiety and the sensations and symptoms in your thoughts. It's changing your behaviors and taking those healthy actions to push yourself to do the hard things and to work on your beliefs and the mindset stuff. All of that's a part of it. So we can't just put a roof on a foundation that doesn't exist, right? It's not going to stay up. It's not really going to hold anything. And it's really important to recognize this. Like, medication can be incredibly helpful, but it can't create the healthy relationship with anxiety on its own. In your recovery, you've got to remember all the tools can be super helpful, but you are the foundation. And that is truly the most important piece. Okay, now let's shift a little and talk about the fears that can be associated with trying medication. So the first one, and typically the biggest one, I know this was my biggest one, was the question of what if it actually makes things worse? And this is a really tricky one, right? Because you're probably already struggling with a lot of anxiety, maybe panic attacks, and you're thinking, I cannot handle anything more, right? I don't want to take something and have it make anything worse than it already is. And to be fair, that can happen sometimes when you start a new medication, any medication. But bodies adjust, and it doesn't mean that you're going to be stuck like that. So, although initially for some people it can make things a little bit more heightened, it can bring about some more symptoms. When you get through that period of your body adjusting, that's when you can actually start feeling some relief. And I know your brain is probably saying, like, yes, medication's going to make it worse. We can't handle anything more, right? But we can't go along with that story. We've got to allow ourselves to look at this a little bit differently. So, I want to tell you a story. When I was going to a psychiatrist and working through starting medication and what that looked like, I remember vocalizing to her, like, I'm really scared. I cannot handle any more sensations, symptoms, like things are already hard enough. And she very logically looked at me and said, okay, Shannon, if that happens, we'll figure that out when we get there. But we're not going there right now. And she said, there are always options, right? You're always in control. We can adjust the dose, we can try something different, or you can just go off of it with my support. And I just remember feeling so much relief from her saying that. Like, yeah, okay, if it makes things worse, there are options, but I don't need to go there and go along with that story of medication is going to make things worse. Like, I was at a point really where I was willing to try anything because honestly, I don't think that things could have gone any worse than they were at that point for me. So it's okay to have this fear of what if it makes things worse, but you have to remind yourself you're not signing a lifelong contract. You are in control and you always have options. Okay, the next one, and is another really big valid fear. What if it doesn't work? I just want to validate this one because this is so hard. You probably feel like I have tried so much stuff. Like I have tried anything and everything, and you might be feeling like nothing has really worked, nothing has been helpful. And then what if I try medication and it also doesn't help? It also doesn't work. What then? I remember thinking this, like medication is sort of the last thing. If this doesn't help me, like I am absolutely doomed. My recovery is hopeless. I'm always going to struggle. But again, that's just one of those stories that your brain is throwing at you. Unfortunately, it's trying to protect you, but it doesn't feel like it's being protective at all. So we really have to take this fear and reframe it a little. What if it helps just even a little bit, even by 5% or 10%? I know back when I was struggling, I was willing to take that chance of like, even if it could help 5%, 10%, I will take anything I can get. And I think oftentimes our brain needs this gentle reframing, right? Like we can't just look at the worst case scenario. We can't look at this isn't going to work. It's going to make things worse, all that stuff. We have to actually say, okay, brain, maybe it's helpful, maybe it's not, but what if it is helpful? What if it really does help to improve our life, turn that dial down, and helps us to focus on the things that are actually going to help us to heal? So I know it might sound a little simple and annoying to hear, but instead of what if it doesn't work, you kind of got to ask yourself, what if it does help, even by 5%, 10%? That's big. Okay, the next fear, and is a big one I hear, is I don't want to be dependent on something. And this I totally understand. I felt the same way. I kind of felt like being dependent on medication was kind of declaring failure, like, or it was somehow cheating. But it's none of those things. It's not failure, it's not cheating. Support isn't the same as dependence. You've still got to do the work, right? And it's absolutely not cheating. Any anxiety medication is not going to take away all the anxiety, all the sensations, the symptoms, the fears, the panic attacks, and just make you skipping down the street, right? Rainbows and butterflies. Like you've still got to put in the work. So I know you might not want to feel dependent on something, but you've got to remind your brain this is really just another supportive tool that can be helpful, just like all the other ones. Okay, the next fear, and this is another one I hear often too, is I don't want to be on it forever, which this is good old anxiety, right? Already jumping to you're going to try medication, you're going to have to be on it forever. It's like, what? That's a story, right? You don't have to be on medication forever. You have control, you can make decisions, and you can get temporary support. Oftentimes, medication is just that. It's temporary support to help you build the capacity and the tolerance and willingness for feeling and build that healthy relationship with anxiety. And then you find yourself in this place where you're like, okay, maybe I could go off of medication. Maybe I could try this, right? And just see how I do. We really can't think of trying medication as so black and white. Like I'm either on it and I'm on it forever, or I don't try it and that's it, I never try it. Like you always have options. And I have to say this, doing that work to support your foundation is so, so important because that's what actually helps you to use medication just for as long as you need it. And then you can go off of it because you've been doing so much work to build that house without relying on one tool or one thing. Okay, the last fear I'll touch on is for those of you who have tried medication, been on it, you went off of it, and now you're contemplating going back on it. And you might have some shame. And really, honestly, this can be for anyone because this fear really revolves around shame. So the fear of, I feel ashamed to go back on it. Here's where I remind you, there is no shame in taking medication. Remember, it's just like any other tool, but you're allowed to feel all the emotions that come along with this. Deciding to go back on medication, maybe after having a good period and going off of it, is really hard. And I think there's some grief there. So you're allowed to feel whatever comes up. But there's no shame in trying medication, going back on medication, doing the things that are helpful and supportive for you. And if you fall into this sort of category, I want you to recognize this is not weakness. Like this is massive that you have this awareness of maybe I need to go back on it, right? It was supportive, it was helpful. Maybe I just need a little bit more support right now, and it can help to get you through a tough time. I always tell my students having awareness and supporting yourself is never a failure. There should never be shame in that. And you'll always thank yourself later for making those decisions because they're such helpful, healthy, and beautiful decisions. Okay, now let's shift a little and talk about a few things that I don't want you doing relating to medication. The first is don't try to figure out which medication to take on your own. You really have to do this with a provider, with somebody who prescribes medication. If you're looking to other people, if you're asking other people who have been through it, what did you take? What did you try? What medication was helpful for you? I see this a lot in Facebook groups or on Reddit, and it's just not helpful information. Somebody can take a medication that's super helpful for them, but it doesn't mean that that medication is going to be really helpful for you. I can give you a really good example of this. When I first went to see a psychiatrist, she asked me, does anxiety run in your family? Has anyone tried medication? Has anyone taken it? Has it been helpful for them? And I said, yes, somebody in my family does take it, and it is really helpful for them. So she first tried me on the same medication that this person was taking. And she said, there's a higher chance that this will be helpful for you since it was helpful for them. And it was someone in my immediate family. And unfortunately, it was not helpful for me at all. I did not have the same experience. It was kind of the opposite experience. So asking strangers, especially what they've taken, what works for them, what hasn't worked, is not going to be helpful information. So please just avoid this and don't do this to yourself. Talk to a provider about which medication might be helpful for you. Okay, the next, please don't make the decision to go on medication when you're in a full-blown panic spiral, right? I think, of course, when we're feeling really anxious, when we're really in it, we can't see things clearly and we don't always make the most helpful and healthy decisions. So allow yourself to really be with this decision, really be thoughtful about it, mindful about it, not in those anxious moments. That'll be super helpful. Okay, the next one, please don't go to Google and type in, what are the side effects of this medication? Any of that stuff. It's just not going to be helpful information. It'll likely trigger you and just cause you to have even more fear. So staying off of Google, again, talking to your provider is going to be so much more helpful. On to the next one. And this is really if you decide to go on medication and you're in that period where you're trying it. So two things here. Your provider is going to tell you you have to actually stick with it and give it a shot. We don't know if it's going to work within the first week or maybe two. You've got to give your body that time to adjust. So you can't quit immediately if you don't get that immediate relief. Oftentimes you don't get that immediate relief when trying any tool, but especially medication. And the second part of this, I don't want you to ignore your body or the side effects. If there are things going on and you're like, I know I have to give this a shot. I know my provider said my body needs to adjust and there can be these side effects. I always tell my students, you know yourself best and you really can't ignore that inner wisdom, that intuition. You've got to listen to yourself and of course, advocate for yourself. Okay, those are some things not to do. Now let's talk about my experience with medication, because I know you're probably wondering, okay, Shannon, you said you tried it, it didn't work. What did that look like? And what did you do? So I tried medication at a few different points in my recovery. I tried it very early on. I tried it sort of a couple of years in, and then I tried it years later from that. And I remember each time going to the psychiatrist and just feeling like so desperate, like I need something. Nothing's working, nothing's helping, like I need relief. And that last time I went to my psychiatrist, I remember thinking like, if this doesn't work, I don't know what I'm going to do, because I have literally tried everything. I've been struggling for nearly a decade at this point, and like I need relief. I can't keep living like this. And this is such a common experience. Like we often seek out support like this, whether it's therapy or medication, when we're feeling really at like our last straw. Like I've tried anything and everything and I don't know what else to do. And like it's this desperate attempt to make yourself feel better, which makes so much sense. But I always say we should be proactive, right? Maybe therapy, maybe looking at whether medication will be helpful or not, having these conversations when you're not so in the thick of it. But I always did it when I was in the thick of it. So I remember going to my psychiatrist when I was sort of in that final straw, like this is the last time, like I'm going to try medication just one more time and see if it's helpful. And I really felt so defeated and hopeless. And I remember sitting down with her and just being like, okay, I'm going to give this a shot. Like I'm fully going to commit to trying medication again. And I did. And I committed for weeks and it just really wasn't helpful. And I'm not going to share with you which medications I tried and what that looked like and like exactly what I experienced, because it really doesn't matter. What wasn't helpful for me doesn't mean it's not going to be helpful for you. And me experiencing side effects with medications doesn't mean that you're going to. Anyone else's experience with medication does not translate to somebody else's. But I tried this medication that I hadn't tried before, and I really did commit to it. And after several weeks, I went off of the medication because it just was not helpful. And I felt like it was causing me to be even more stuck than I already was. And so I made that decision with my psychiatrist to titrate off of it. And I remember going in and talking to her and just being like, what do I do now? Because I've literally tried everything there is to try. Like I have done so much. I don't know. I feel so incredibly hopeless. And I remember her looking at me and saying, Shannon, I think the biggest problem is that you've been trying to fight anxiety for so dang long. Like you've just been trying so hard to not feel it, to experience it, to push it away. And I think you trying to run from it so much and fight it is what's really causing so much of the problem. And I remember feeling like, dang, I have to sit with this because she is not wrong. Like she was so right. I did not make any space for anxiety. I was so afraid of it. I was so afraid of panicking. I had had hundreds, probably thousands of panic attacks, and I was just as scared at the thousandth one than I was the first one. And then she said to me, how about we stop trying to fight it and get rid of it, and we actually work to create a healthy relationship with it? Like, I'm going to help you, and I really want you to stop trying to manage anxiety. Like, you've got to stop, and we've got to actually make space for it. And I thought, okay, like, here's where I have to get real honest with myself, and here's where I'm going to have to put in some really hard work. But I wanted to do it. Like I wanted to do it naturally, holistically, without medication. And I think for me, that was a blockage for a long time of me just not recognizing I'm just trying to outsource and look for the magical thing and just make it so that something was going to fix it for me. And I didn't recognize I was the thing that was going to fix it. Like ultimately, I was the person. I was the only thing that could create that healthy relationship with anxiety. So it wasn't to say I left her office and like it was great thereafter. I put in so much hard work, but it really showed me like you have to create a healthy relationship with anxiety. You can't keep fighting it, avoiding it, pushing it away. Like you really got to work on letting it come with you, letting it be a part of your life. And that's when I found it really started to quiet. So I have to say this, I'm not the only proof that you can recover without medication. I've worked with so many people who have recovered without taking medication. I've also worked with lots of people who have recovered with taking medication or trying it at different points in their recovery. There's no right path. There's no right decision. Medication might help you. It might not be helpful for you, and that's okay. You've got to remember it's a tool just like any other tool. but truly, you are the tool that is going to heal your relationship with anxiety. So if you're trying to decide whether or not to try medication, allow yourself to just slow down and really give it some thought and make a mindful decision while having conversations with your provider about it and really deciding, like, is this the right thing for you? And most importantly, trust yourself. You know yourself best. You know whether or not this is going to be a good decision for you or not. And most importantly, trust yourself. You know yourself best. So when you slow down and you really get quiet and you start thinking about this and having conversations about it, you're going to know and feel what might be the right next best decision for you. And if you're working on actually facing anxiety and panic and creating that healthy relationship with anxiety, this is what I help people with every day. I have lots of helpful resources that I offer. I have very specific classes on things like driving anxiety and panic attacks and anxious thinking and toilet anxiety. I also have a private coaching community where I meet with that community every single week live. I teach, we have group support and discussion. I'm also in there every day supporting them. And I also have a 10-week program called Panic to Peace, which is incredibly life-changing and is something I do twice a year, once in the fall and once in the spring. So if you're wanting more guidance and support from somebody who actually gets it, I'm here. Okay, until next time, keep taking healthy action.